The iPhone 16 Pro Max, compared to the 15 Pro Max, it's hardly an upgrade with just a newer 48 megapixel 0.5x camera that doesn't improve shots in the real world, and a camera capture button that's clunky and impractical to use. And then if you compare it to a mirrorless camera that's similarly priced, like maybe the Sony A6700 with a zoom lens, videographers will take the real camera anytime. So this iPhone 16 Pro Max, if we use it for videos, what exactly is it good for? Well, my company produces a ton of videos for our clients, and despite our arsenal of Sony mirrorless cameras like the A7S III, the A7 IV, and the A7C, we still use the iPhone Pro Max in many circumstances. Now, if you're wondering, should you be getting this phone for videos? This episode is made just for you. Over the previous 2 episodes of this new iPhone 16 series, I have compared the 16 Pro Max against the 15 Pro Max. And then again with the Sony A7S III on an RS4 Pro gimbal. Go check those episodes out for the verdicts after this video. Spoilers! This iPhone 16 Pro Max doesn't compare that much better than the 15 Pro Max. And besides a more professional camera like the A7S III, it really pales in comparison. Still, we use the iPhone Pro Max cameras in some of our shoots. And in these scenarios, the iPhones weren't used as backup cams, but we actually prefer it over our professional cameras. Now, what are these scenarios? There are actually 5 of them. First and foremost, the iPhone Pro Max has a very good main camera that can shoot in 1x, which is around 24mm, and 2x, which is 48mm. These focal lengths are very close to the wide-angle 24mm we use a lot in our B-rolls, and 50mm for portraits. So the first scenario that the iPhone 16 Pro Max is great for is B-rolls, specifically when taking mid or close-up shots of people. Now take a look at some of these B-rolls of people we took that are totally usable even in professional client projects. Don't you think? Second, the 16 Pro Max has a pretty good cinematic mode that can somewhat accurately mimic real optical bokeh on more professional cameras. And what's even better than any of the most expensive film cameras and lenses is that the iPhone can apply or remove bokeh in post. So for instance, right, if you think you need some separation of the subject from the background, you can apply an f2.8 aperture setting on the shot in post-production and you get this. Or if you think you don't like the fake blur background and you wish to remove it totally, you actually can, again after the shot is taken, during editing. Such wizardry is impossible in any of our Sony mirrorless cameras. So for that matter, right, the iPhone 16 Pro Max is one of the best behind the scenes or BTS cameras that you can get. Because after the whole scene is shot, you can selectively choose who in the shot you want to focus on. Quite neat, yes? Now the third use case of the 16 Pro Max in our shoots is to use the phone to pre-shoot shots and test out how feasible those shots can be before we shoot with our cameras. For one, the iPhone is a lot easier to shoot with, being a lot more maneuverable and a lot faster too. Plus, the bigger screen is so much easier for the director, that's me, to review the shot as compared to on a tiny 3-inch screen on the camera. And so after a test pre-shot, our videographer understands better on how to replicate that shot on the main cameras. And so the workflow becomes a lot more efficient. Fourth use case, and this is the one we use a lot, and that's property shots. I'm referring to real estate B-roll shots both in the apartment and outside. And since the 16 Pro Max has an upgraded, supposedly upgraded 48 megapixel 0.5x lens, right? There's even more reason for us to use it now for such shots. Now, why do we use the Pro Max over professional cameras, you ask? Well, firstly, the 0.5x is really wide. It's around 11mm in full frame terms, so when we shoot property indoors, you can see a lot without the need to pan much. And good 11mm lenses are pretty difficult to get on cameras. Secondly, videographers will know that super wide lens has a very neat convergence effect. Now, simply put, the straight lines we see in the real world gets converged in an ultra-wide lens where the lines start on the edges, converge very quickly into the center, just like these shots. And when we play with movements on the lens, we get that shift in perspective that looks eerily pleasing and magical. Like the world is warping. So when applied correctly, especially to buildings and structures outdoors, the Pro Max 0.5x lens can take beautiful shots like this. And you know what's even better? Because of the incredibly stabilized shots that you get on the iPhone nowadays, you don't even need to use a gimbal when taking those shots. Simply walk and tilt the phone and you'll get shots like this one. Moving on, the third plus point for using the iPhone instead of a camera with a wide-angle lens mounted on a gimbal is the phone weighs maybe 10 times less than a professional rig. And hence, our videographers can take shots much longer in their shoots. Oh, and because of the pretty good battery life on the phone compared to the maximum like 90 to 100 minutes on the camera, right? I guess this is a fourth plus point on why we use the Pro Max on our real estate shoots also. Oh wait, there's still a fifth point, and that's the HDR capability on the iPhones, meaning the brighter skies against the darker shadows won't cause so much of a loss in details compared to the average mirrorless camera. And that's why we get shots like this straight out of the iPhone versus shots like this on a more prosumer-based mirrorless camera. The last scenario in which we use the iPhone Pro Max a lot in our shoots is when we are shooting social media videos. Frankly, if you are shooting for TikTok or Instagram, there's hardly a need to shoot on real cameras anymore. The workflow is just painfully slow. Imagine you have to set up the camera by attaching the lens, then mounting the camera to a gimbal, and then selecting the right settings on the camera. And when you are ready to shoot, right, all you can preview yourself on is a tiny 3-inch monitor that's barely visible on the side. And the worst is after shooting, because you need to switch off the camera, remove the SD cards, insert them into a computer, download the footages, edit them if they don't look good enough, and finally, after a whole hour of setting up, shooting and editing, you can post your 8-second TikTok reel. Compare this whole workflow with shooting, editing, and posting on the fly using a phone. I mean, even if you don't want to post directly, you can save at least 50 to 80% of the time when you use a phone to shoot social media reels as compared when using a professional camera. Now honestly, the world has changed so much that even we, a professional video production company, will wholeheartedly agree that professional cameras are needed for every video taking scenarios anymore. And without stepping on other professionals' toes, I believe any videographer who still insists in using his or her camera for every single use case is doomed to lag behind, perhaps even fail. In fact, have you noticed that this video's arrows, or what you are seeing of me since the beginning to the end, isn't shot on one of our professional cameras? We purposely shoot this episode on an iPhone 16 Pro Max to prove our point that even YouTube videos don't have to be shot on cameras anymore. Tell me, would you know if I didn't reveal these facts? Oh, by the way, did you notice that I mentioned iPhone Pro Max a lot more than iPhone 16 Pro Max? Well, that's intentional because, frankly, any of the more recent Pro Maxes, right, like the 15, the 14, or even 13 Pro Max can do what I mentioned with ease. There's no need to convince yourself to buy the 16 Pro Max for the scenarios that I've mentioned above. Then again, if you wish to just future-proof your video taking, then you won't go wrong with the 16 Pro Max, even though I don't really recommend this phone that much. To me, this is an excellent camera phone, but it's not really the best iPhone Pro Max upgrade. And speaking of this 16 Pro Max being an excellent phone, let me convince you with side-by-side comparisons of this iPhone versus a top-of-the-line Samsung Galaxy Ultra in the next episode. I mean, even my video producer, who has always been an Android phone user, well, he has changed to using the 16 Pro Max now. So be sure to subscribe to this channel so you won't miss out on why he has switched. And especially if you are also thinking if you should also hop over to the side of Apple. Alright, I'll see you in the next video. Hey, John, meet the 16 Pro Max in the shoot. Hey, no. Hey, come on, need to finish up this video.